My name is Kate, and one rainy Seattle morning, I almost lost everything I'd spent years building in secret. My phone buzzed relentlessly on my nightstand, the screen flashing with a text from Lucas. Servers down. Investors are freaking out. Where are you? My heart stopped. I was in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house, surrounded by old coding books and faded posters, pretending to be the dutiful daughter who'd never left Carter Textiles. But in reality, I was the CEO of Nexus Solutions, a tech startup worth 9 figures, and my family had no idea. I'd been living this double life for years, ever since my father laughed off my idea to modernize our family's textile business with software. Computers can't replace handshakes, Kate, he'd said, his voice dripping with that familiar mix of pride and dismissal. I was just a kid then, barely out of college, my head full of dreams sparked by my uncle's late-night coding lessons. He'd show me how lines of code could solve problems, make things efficient, change the world. But my father? He saw my laptop as a toy, not a tool. So I stopped trying to convince him and started building something of my own. Nexus Solutions was born in a cramped San Francisco co-working space, far from the gray, outdated walls of Carter Textiles, Seattle headquarters. I poured every spare hour into it, coding through the night, fueled by coffee and a quiet rage. My startup software revolutionized supply chain management, catching the eye of investors like Zoe, a Silicon Valley shark who saw my potential before I did. By the time I was juggling board meetings for Carter Textiles and investor calls for Nexus, my company was secretly keeping my family's business afloat. Every time they praised a miracle fix to a client account, it was my code working behind the scenes. And they never knew. That morning, though, as rain pelted my window and Lucas's texts piled up, I felt the walls closing in. My other phone, the one my family knew about, lit up with a voicemail from my mother. Kate, darling, you missed family breakfast again. Your father's upset. We need you at the office by noon. Her voice was all honey and guilt, the kind that made my stomach twist. I could picture her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently, her eyes narrowing at the thought of me slacking. If only she knew I hadn't slept in 2 days, debugging code to save a major client deal for both my companies. I rolled out of bed, my laptop still warm from last night's work. Sticky notes with scribbled algorithms littered the floor, a stark contrast to the pristine order of my parents' house. I fired off a quick reply to Lucas. Fixing it now. Stall Zoe. Then I opened my Nexus dashboard, my fingers flying over the keyboard to diagnose the server crash. The stakes were high, our Series B funding round was days away, and a glitch now could spook our investors. My heart raced as I typed, the weight of my secret pressing down harder than ever. Growing up, I was the odd one out in our family. My sister, Elise, was the golden child, charming clients with her perfect smile and never questioning our father's vision. She thrived in the textile world, schmoozing with suppliers and closing deals like she was born for it. Me? I was the one sneaking off to code in the attic, dreaming of Silicon Valley while my father lectured me about family legacy. He'd built Carter Textiles into a regional powerhouse, but the industry was changing, and he refused to see it. When I pitched a supply chain app years ago, he shut me down so fast I could still feel the sting. Focus on what matters, Kate, he'd said. This company is your future. So I made my own. As the server stabilized, I exhaled, but my relief was short-lived. My work phone buzzed again, this time a text from Elise. Dad's losing it over the Pacific Imports account. Where are you? Pacific Imports was our biggest client, and I knew exactly why they were upset. Their latest order was a mess, but my software had already flagged the issue and proposed a fix. I'd sent Elise the solution last week, disguised as a hunch in an email. She'd taken the credit, of course, but I didn't care. As long as Carter Textiles stayed afloat, my secret was safe. I threw on a blazer, grabbed both phones, and headed downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen, her eyes flicking over me like I was a project that needed fixing. You look exhausted, Kate, she said, her voice laced with concern that felt more like judgment. You can't keep burning the candle at both ends. The family needs you focused. I forced a smile, mumbling something about late-night spreadsheets. If she knew those spreadsheets were for a company she'd never heard of, she'd probably faint. Driving to Carter Textiles, I felt a familiar knot in my chest. The office was a time capsule, faded signs, outdated computers, and my father's stern portrait glaring from the lobby. I'd spent years here, playing the part of the loyal daughter while building Nexus solutions in the shadows. Lucas was the only one who knew the truth. He'd been there since we were kids, cheering me on when I won coding competitions and consoling me when my family brushed me off. "You're gonna change the world, Kate," he'd say, his grin infectious. Now, he was my right-hand coder, keeping Nexus running while I played double agent. As I pulled into the parking lot, my Nexus phone buzzed with a message from Zoe. "Investors want a meeting tomorrow." No excuses. My stomach dropped. Tomorrow was the board meeting at Carter Textiles, where my father expected me to present projections I'd barely had time to fake. I couldn't be in two places at once, but I couldn't let either side down. I took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel. This was my life. Always one step away from being found out, always one choice away from everything falling apart. But as I stepped out of the car, I made a promise to myself. Soon, they'd all know who I really was. The next morning, I was in San Francisco, pacing the sleek glass-walled office of Nexus Solutions, my heart pounding as Zoe grilled me about the investor meeting. "Kate, they're ready to sign, but they want you there in person," she said, her sharp eyes locked on mine. "You can't keep dodging them." Her voice had that no-nonsense edge that made me both admire and fear her. Zoe had built and sold her own startup before I could legally drink, and she didn't tolerate half measures. But my work phone was already buzzing with a text from my father. "Pacific Imports meeting at 2. Don't be late." I felt like I was being torn in two. I'd driven down from Seattle at dawn, telling my family I was running errands. The truth was, I needed to debug a critical update to our software before the investors saw it. Lucas was already at his desk, his hoodie pulled up, typing furiously. "We're close, Kate," he said without looking up. "But this bug's a nightmare. If we don't fix it, the demo tomorrow's gonna tank." I nodded, my stomach churning. The demo was our chance to lock in the Series B funding, $50 million to take Nexus global. But if I missed the Pacific Imports meeting, Elise would have my head, and my father would never let me hear the end of it. I opened my laptop, diving into the code, while Zoe hovered nearby. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," she said, tossing me a coffee. "How long are you going to keep this up? Running a startup and playing secretary for your dad?" I shot her a look. "I'm not a secretary. I'm saving their company." She raised an eyebrow. "By sneaking your software into their systems? That's not saving, Kate. That's sabotage waiting to happen." Her words stung, because they were true. Every time I fixed a Carter Textiles problem with Nexus Tech, I was risking exposure. But what choice did I have? Let my family's legacy collapse? Back in Seattle, the Pacific Imports crisis was escalating. My father had called me twice during my drive, his voice clipped with frustration. "Kate, their orders delayed again. Elise says you have some ideas. Get to the office." I'd sent Elise another hunch email last night, outlining how my software could reroute their shipments to avoid a custom snag. She'd present it as her own idea, like always, and I'd stay in the shadows. But the guilt was eating at me, not for deceiving Elise, but for hiding who I was from the world. At Nexus, Lucas let out a triumphant yes. As the bug fix worked, the demo was back on track, but my relief was short-lived. My mother called, her voice sugary but sharp. "Kate, darling, you missed family dinner last night. Your sister's working so hard on this Pacific Imports mess, and you're where exactly?" I mumbled something about a supplier visit, hating how easily the lies came. "We're counting on you, Kate," she said. "Don't let us down." I wanted to scream that I was the one keeping their company alive, but I just promised to be at the office soon. As I drove back to Seattle, Lucas texted, "Zoe's right. You're killing yourself with this double life." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. He'd seen me at my lowest, crying after my father rejected my first tech pitch, promising myself I'd prove him wrong. Lucas had been there, coding beside me in that dingy co-working space, turning my anger into something real. But now, with investors circling and Carter Textiles teetering, the pressure was suffocating. I felt like I was betraying everyone, my family, my team, myself. At Carter Textiles, the Pacific Imports meeting was a disaster waiting to happen. Elise was in the conference room, her designer suit pristine, charming the client reps while throwing me a look that could freeze lava. "Nice of you to show up, Kate," she said, her smile tight. I slid into my seat, my laptop open to fake projections I'd thrown together last night. Owen, our consultant, gave me a curious glance, like he could see right through me. I'd caught him studying my work before, asking questions about efficiencies that sounded too close to my software's capabilities. The client rep was blunt. "Your delays are costing us millions," he said. "Fix it or we're done." My father's face was stone, but I could see the panic in his eyes. I cleared my throat. "I've got a solution," I said, pulling up a demo of my software, rebranded with Carter Textiles logo. "This system can reroute shipments in real time, cutting delays by 40%. The rep leaned forward, interested, but Elise cut in. "This is my plan, Kate. I emailed it to you last week." I bit my tongue, my blood boiling. She hadn't emailed me anything, she'd just parroted my suggestions. Owen spoke up. "This software is impressive. Where'd it come from?" His tone was too knowing, and my heart skipped a beat. "Just something I've been tinkering with," I said, avoiding his gaze. My father waved it off. "We don't need more tech experiments, Kate. Focus on the numbers." I wanted to scream that my experiments had saved their biggest account 3 times this year, but my Nexus phone buzzed. "Zoe, investors moved the meeting to tomorrow. Same time as your board meeting. Choose." I felt like I couldn't breathe. Tomorrow, everything would collide. The next day, I was a walking bundle of nerves, my 2 phones burning holes in my pockets. I was back in Seattle, prepping for the Carter Textiles board meeting, but my mind was in San Francisco, where Zoe was stalling investors. Lucas had texted me at dawn. "Demo's ready, but Zoe says you need to be there." "What's the plan?" The plan was to survive the next 24 hours without my worlds imploding. But as I walked into Carter Textiles, my mother's car pulled up behind me. She stepped out, her heels clicking, her eyes narrowing as she took in my disheveled state. "Kate, where have you been?" she asked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I called your apartment last night, and you weren't there." My heart stopped. I'd been at Nexus, working through the night to polish the demo. "I was at a friend's." I lied, but her frown deepened. "You're hiding something, Kate. Your father's counting on you for this board meeting, and you're off doing who knows what." I wanted to tell her the truth, to scream that I was saving their company while they judged me, but I just nodded. "I'll be ready, Mom." Inside, the office was buzzing with tension. My father had called an emergency family meeting before the board presentation, and Elise was already in his office, her arms crossed, looking like she'd just won an argument. "There she is," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Thought you'd skip town." I ignored her, setting up my laptop, but my father's voice stopped me cold. "Kate, we need to talk about your role here. You've been distracted, and it's affecting the business." His words hit like a slap. Distracted? I'd been propping up their failing systems for years. Before I could respond, my Nexus phone buzzed. "Zoe, investors are getting antsy. You need to commit." I silenced it, my hands shaking. Owen walked in, his eyes flicking between me and my father. "I've reviewed the Pacific Imports data," he said. "Those solutions you proposed, Kate, they're not just hunches, are they?" His tone was calm, but it felt like a trap. I froze, searching for a lie, but Elise jumped in. "She's just trying to take credit for my work." Owen. Typical. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice steady. "I have a plan for the board, Dad. Just give me a chance to present it." My father sighed, rubbing his temples. "You've got one shot, Kate. Don't waste it on your tech nonsense." My mother touched his arm, her voice soft but manipulative. "She'll do what's best for the family, won't you, darling?" I nodded, but inside I was screaming. They didn't see me. They saw a disappointment, a rebel who didn't fit their mold. As I left the office, Lucas called. "Kate, Zoe's losing it. The investors want you in San Francisco tonight." I closed my eyes, the weight of it all crushing me.
"I can't," I said. "Not yet."
That afternoon, I was back at Nexus, my heart racing as I rehearsed my board presentation. Zoe was pacing, her patience wearing thin. "You're risking everything, Kate," she said. "If you don't show up for the investors, they'll walk." I nodded, my mind spinning. I decided to reveal Nexus at the board meeting to show my family the truth, but the timing was a nightmare. If I missed the investor meeting, I could lose the funding. If I skipped the board meeting, my family would never forgive me. Then it got worse. My mother showed up at Nexus, her face a mix of shock and disapproval as she took in the modern office. "What is this place, Kate?" she demanded. "Some startup fantasy? You're supposed to be at Carter Textiles, not playing entrepreneur." I froze, my laptop open to our valuation report. Zoe stepped in, her voice smooth. "Mrs. Carter, I'm Zoe, Kate's business partner. She's working on something extraordinary." My mother's eyes narrowed. Extraordinary? She's abandoning her family. I wanted to scream, to tell her I was saving them, but I just said, "Mom, I'll explain everything tomorrow."
Trust me.
After she left, Zoe turned to me. "This is it, Kate. You can't keep hiding. Tomorrow you either tell them or lose everything." I nodded, my throat tight. Lucas walked in, his face grim. "Server stable, but the investors are talking about pulling out. And Owen just emailed me. He knows about Nexus." My heart sank. Owen had been digging, and now he was a wild card. I looked at my friends, my team, the people who believed in me when my family didn't. "We're doing this," I said. "Tomorrow, I show them who I am." The morning of the board meeting, I arrived at Carter Textiles an hour early, my nerves on fire. I'd been up all night fixing the server, my eyes burning, but adrenaline kept me sharp. I set up my laptop in the boardroom, the projector humming as I loaded 2 presentations. One for Carter Textiles, full of safe projections, and the real one, the truth about Nexus Solutions. Lucas slipped in, handing me a coffee. "Zoe's with the investors," he whispered. "They're here, Kate." In the back. I nearly choked. "Here? At Carter Textiles?" He nodded, grinning. "They want to see the show." The boardroom filled fast. Mr. Thompson, who'd known my grandfather, fidgeting with his tie, Sarah from legal, looking nervous, Pacific Imports reps, stone-faced after their latest crisis. My family took their seats, my father at the head, his expression unreadable. My mother, her hands folded tightly, Elise, glaring like I'd stolen her spotlight. Owen sat in the corner, his eyes locked on me, a faint smile playing on his lips. I felt like a tightrope walker, one misstep from falling. My father stood, his voice commanding. "Today, we're discussing the future of Carter Textiles. Kate has a vision to share." All eyes turned to me, and my heart pounded so loud I was sure they could hear it. I clicked to the first slide, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Before we talk vision, let's talk truth." The screen lit up with Carter Textiles' real numbers, losses piling up, systems failing, clients slipping away. Gasps rippled through the room. My father's face darkened, but I kept going. "This is what Carter Textiles looks like without help," I said, clicking again. The screen showed a second set of numbers, revenue spikes, efficiency gains, Pacific Imports account saved. "And this is what it looks like with my software." I clicked one last time, and the Nexus Solutions logo filled the screen. The room erupted. Elise jumped up. "What is this, Kate? Some kind of stunt?" My mother pressed a hand to her chest, and my father's fist clenched. But I wasn't done. "For years, I've been running Nexus Solutions, a tech company valued at 9 figures," I said, my voice rising. "Every time you praised a miracle fix, every time Pacific Import stayed, that was my software. I built it because you wouldn't listen, because you told me technology was a waste." Zoe stood in the back, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I'm Zoe, Kate's lead investor. Her company's revolutionizing supply chain management, and it's been keeping Carter Textiles alive." My father's face was pale, but he didn't speak. Elise was livid. "You've been lying to us, working against us." I shook my head. "Not against you, for you. But I'm done hiding. You have a choice. Merge with Nexus and modernize, or I pull my software and you see how long you last without it." The Pacific Imports rep leaned forward. "Is this true? Your software fixed our delays?" I nodded, pulling up data. 3 times this year, my system caught issues before they cost you millions. Owen stood, his voice calm but firm. "I've audited Carter Textiles. Without Kate's interventions, you'd have collapsed months ago. Her company's the future." The board murmured, Mr. Thompson dropping his pen in shock. My mother's voice cracked. Kate, how could you deceive us? I met her eyes, my chest aching. Because you never gave me a choice. You wanted loyalty, but you didn't want me. My father stood, staring at the screen, then at me. The room went silent, every breath held. I felt exposed, raw, like I'd ripped open my soul. But I also felt free. For the first time, they saw me, not the dutiful daughter, not the rebel, but Kate, the woman who'd built an empire in the shadows. What's it going to be, Dad? I asked, my voice soft but unyielding. Partnership or pride? The silence in the boardroom was deafening, my father's eyes locked on the Nexus logo glowing on the screen. My heart pounded, but I stood tall, waiting for his answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough. Tell me more, Kate. Tell me everything. Relief flooded me, but I kept my composure, clicking to the next slide. This is how Nexus saved Pacific Imports, I said, showing data, shipments rerouted, costs cut, errors caught before they spiraled. The board leaned in, even Elise's scowl softening as the numbers sank in. Zoe stepped forward, sliding a contract across the table. This merger makes Carter Textiles a subsidiary of Nexus Solutions, she said. You keep your name, your legacy, but gain cutting-edge tech and a stake in a global company. My father took the contract, his hands steady, but his eyes betraying a flicker of awe. You built this, he said, almost to himself. All those late nights, the missed dinners, you weren't slacking. I nodded, my throat tight. I was saving us, Dad. In my own way. Elise spoke up, her voice quieter now. And my role? You're just taking over? I shook my head. I need you, Elise. Your client relationships, your industry knowledge, that's what makes this work. Partners, not rivals. She stared at me, then nodded slowly, a grudging respect in her eyes. My mother dabbed at her tears. I just wanted us to stay together, Kate. Why didn't you tell us? I sighed, the weight of years spilling out. Would you have listened? Really listened? The silence answered for her. My father picked up a pen, then paused, looking at me. I made a mistake, he said. I was so focused on my father's legacy, I didn't see yours. He signed the contract, and the room exhaled. Zoe grinned. Lucas gave me a subtle fist bump, and Owen nodded approvingly. The board's on your side, he said. This is the future. The Pacific Imports rep stood. We're staying with Carter Textiles because of this. Applause broke out, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged. Later, at a press conference, cameras flashed as I stood beside my family, announcing the merger. My father's hand rested on my shoulder, a quiet gesture of pride. Elise was already diving into Nexus's software manual, muttering about learning this tech stuff. My mother, still uneasy with computers, promised to try video calls if I came to family dinner. Lucas, ever the joker, whispered, "You did it, Kate. You changed the game." I smiled, my heart full. This wasn't the revenge I'd imagined. It was better. It was family, messy and real, finally seeing me for who I was. That night, at a proper family dinner, no laptops allowed, we laughed over my mother's attempts to understand the cloud. My father asked about my code, genuinely curious, and Elise pitched ideas for new clients. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, merging companies, teaching my family tech, expanding globally, but we'd face it together. As I looked around the table, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. I'd built an empire, but this was home. To everyone listening, thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope my story reminds you to chase your dreams, even when the people you love don't understand. Keep fighting, keep building, and one day they'll see you too.